technology in general can be seen two ways. From the perspective of GIU system-wide reviews, the technology might be an argument for non-cooperation by pretexting that technology is incompatible, so we should go doing our work in silos. The other, more generous, and I think we should explore in particular that, a second option is to use the technology for more interaction and more cooperation among agencies. We have an excellent panel today. Although we are a little bit late, well, a little bit is a euphemism, it's half an hour later, I would say. But we still have enough time, so we will have the first part of the debate till 3:30 p.m. And then we'll have a break for half an hour, and then we'll continue. In the first half, three panelists will take the floor, and then the other two panelists will continue after the break. Most of the biography and the achievements of the panelists are already known by you, but let me very briefly introduce Professor Manuel Frutos-Perez Fea, who is a visiting professor in Cambridge Education Group, visiting professor in the University of Bristol, and the Director of Business Development in the Cambridge Education Group. This Cambridge Education Group is led by Professor Fea, developed partnership with prestigious universities across the United Kingdom to enable them to expand their reach to global markets through the provision of high-quality online learning. You have the floor, Manuel.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction, and good afternoon to everyone. It's great to be here. We've had such an excellent day already hearing expertise on sustainable development from different parts of the world, which is great. I would like to thank Professor Alam for the fantastic organization of this event and for inviting me to speak here today. It's a real honor. My name is Manuel Frutos-Perez. I'm a professor in digital education, as you just heard, and I work for Cambridge Education Group here in the UK. My talk is about online learning, the best practice that has been developed over the last decade in the field, and also the great educational benefits it can bring if we follow that best practice. So let me start by giving you a very quick overview of Cambridge Education Group. We are an education enterprise. We specialize in international education. We have a number of divisions, such as colleges, both in the UK and abroad. I work in the digital education division, where we partner with universities to help them develop online programs of study. And we help them deliver those programs to an international audience. So the digital division is the youngest part of the group. We have had very rapid growth, which we have been very meticulous about doing it in a sustainable way, ensuring that we deliver the highest level of quality to all our learners. In 3 years that we have been in operation, we have formed 5 substantial partnerships with UK universities. And today we have 27 courses. Most of them are full postgraduate degrees at master's level with those universities. And our combined student population across those partnerships has grown beyond 1,000 students who are based in 71 different countries. So these are online learners, they are part-time learners, and they are based right across the world. And just to put these figures into perspective, at 1,000 students, we have a larger postgraduate population than 50 UK universities. We really pride ourselves in the quality of the online learning pedagogy that we have developed, and we also pride ourselves in the excellent support that we provide to our students. And the result of that, the result of using best practice pedagogy, and really good support for the students results in really good retention and attainment rates. At the moment, right across all our partnerships, our retention rates stand at 95%, which for online learning is a real achievement. So, let's move on to the main part of the presentation, what I really want to talk about today, which is about how we learn and then how we learn online and what would good look like in an online environment. So how we learn. We really know a lot. As educators, we know a lot already about how people learn. We know that people learn best when learning is an active process. And we know that people learn best when that learning process is actually a social one. And when it challenges us, when we really, as learners, we get stretched, that the process of education is really pushing us to learn and to do things that are difficult. And this is nothing new. We have known this for a very long time. Here on the screen, now you can see a Chinese proverb. Chinese philosophers already passed that wisdom on to us. And that proverb is dated probably around the year 300 BC. And it says, "Tell me, and I will forget. Show me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I will understand." And that really goes to the core of how we learn as human beings. We learn by being an active participant in the process, and we learn by doing it together. So, online learning. What has been the issue with online learning, particularly in the early days of online learning? The problem with online learning has been that the easy thing to do online is actually to create a process in which the learner takes a passive role, in which the learner is an individual, and in which the learning process is actually just a transaction where knowledge passes from one place to another. That is the easiest thing to do online, because if you have got your learning platform, you can put materials onto it, you can design learning materials, put them up there, deliver them to the learners. Now, the problem with that is that if you look at both concepts, how we know already that we learn best and how that traditional early days of online learning happened, the two things don't match up. If we are saying we learn best by being active, social, and by being challenged by the process, then the solution to that cannot be to produce a passive process that treats learners individually and that becomes sort of a transaction rather than a challenge. So, what are we doing? What are we actively doing in Cambridge Education Group to try to counter that, to try to deliver online learning in a best practice way? We have developed a pedagogic framework which follows best practice, which has been developed by eminent educators, both in the UK and abroad. And in this framework which we have developed, it guides the development of our programs of study to make sure that the learning experience we will provide when we design those programs, we want to make sure that the learning experience is going to be active, is going to be social, and is going to be challenging. And so how do you ensure that? The framework guides the design of all the activities that will form part of the course. And we always do an audit of that to make sure that the total of activities in a particular course, only 10% of that is dedicated to acquisition. Yes, you do need to present the theories to students, you need to pass them on to them, but that should only be a small part of the learning experience. We reckon that 10% is the correct amount. Then discussion. There should be a fair amount of discussion in the learning process. And we make sure, when we do that audit of all the activities we create, that at least 20% of all the activities involve discussion of different types and done in different ways with different technologies, but at the core of it is a discussion activity. And then the rest, 70%, is all about practice, production, and inquiry. This is what is really challenging our learners. So you can see that You need the framework because, as I mentioned before, the problem with online learning is that the easy thing to do is not actually best practice. So when you have got a framework and you can audit what you're doing, it helps you guide the designers and the developers and the academic team to make sure that there is a balance, and that balance is erring towards best practice, which means that it's got to be an active process, it's got to be social, and it's got to be challenging. In addition to the framework, we have got a weekly learning pattern where those activities are distributed across the learning week for all our students. That's really important because in online learning, particularly the type of online learning in which we engage, which is part-time, mostly master's courses. So most of our learners are professionals, they're already working, they have got families, they have got very busy lives. So it's really important that the structure of a learning week is very clear to them. There is absolute clarity. They know what to expect. They know what they're going to have to be engaging with. And we at the design stage, we distribute our activity types from the pedagogic framework, we distribute them on a learning week. So any learner on our courses, they can predict when the next week comes up, they know exactly what's going to be happening. There's going to be an introduction at the beginning, there's going to be some guided practice, there is going to be a challenge activity, there is going to be a reflection activity, and then there's going to be a webinar at the end. It's an active process, it's very collaborative across all the cohorts, and they can predict exactly what's going to happen. That's to help them engage with the process. So those are the kind of the two core elements of how we design courses, following the pedagogic framework and following a weekly learning pattern for our students. In addition to that, something really important that also was largely missed out in the early days of online learning is, for us, this is one of the pillars of the model, is actually making sure that the students are engaged and successful in those courses. And in order to do that, you need to put in a lot of support for these learners. Online learning doesn't require less support for students. It requires more. And that's a very common mistake when implemented online learning, particularly in the past. More and more institutions are realizing now this, but it's not widespread yet. Support is fundamental. If you want to achieve very high retention rates, if you want to achieve very high attainment rates, you do need to put a lot of support for these learners because they have got busy lives, they're working, they've got families. The study is not their main priority, so they do need a lot of support to be successful. And this support is layered, and we layer that across three domains. The first one is the academic, very important, of course, with online tutors who facilitate the delivery of the courses, and with academic teams from the different faculties, from the different universities who we work with. All of that is in there. So this is an active course that is taught online. It's not simply you log in and you have access to materials. These courses are taught just in a new, different way. The second layer of support is the pastoral. And this is the layer of support that most commonly gets missed in online learning courses. When you think about a traditional university course on a campus, students who are attending a course on campus, they've got all sorts of pastoral support services available to them. Student services, career services, mental health and well-being services. All sorts of people who work on campus, and all of those people provide support to students. So when you put a course online, you need to make sure that all of those support structures are replicated. Obviously, they're not going to need help with transport, because there is no transport involved, but they will need help with financial matters, with mental health and well-being matters, with career support services. All of those, their needs are exactly the same as students who are on campus. So when you are implementing a high-quality online learning course online, you need to make sure that those support services are accessible by those students, just like they would do on campus. And the last layer of support, really important, the technical one, because obviously our campus is online. So students need to have reliable access to that campus, which is online. So providing technical support is very important. And as our students are spread across the world, that technical support ideally needs to be 24/7 so that we cover all the time zones. So, what does this form of active online education look like? The images you're going to see here are examples from a module from an MSc in Global Public Health that we have developed with Queen Mary University here in London. And what you can see now is a very clear interface with weekly structure that I mentioned before that provides to students immediate clarity. And also it gives them direct access to all the social and support areas that we make available for them. And also, you can get an idea of the close and active relationship that the academic team running the modules builds with the students online. Just a reminder of my points, my previous points, this is active learning. This is learning where relationships are developed and students participate. They work in groups, they are challenged on a weekly basis to make sure that their critical abilities are developed to prepare them for the next stage in their career. These students, the vast majority of them, they're doing these courses because they want to further develop their careers. We need to make sure that they're actually doing that. We need to develop their critical thinking skills. We cannot develop criticality in students if we don't get them to work together on challenges. And here you can now have a look at a more dynamic look at what courses look like. It's a very short video that explains how they work.
When your studies with us commence, you'll have anytime, anywhere access to everything you need in your online learning environment. Course content, announcements, calendar, assignments, it's all here. The dashboard is the gateway to all your live course modules and your two community hubs, the Student Hub and the Course Hub. A week before your first module goes live, you'll get access to orientation material and activities in the Course Hub. This contains important information about how to approach your studies, so make sure you work your way through it as soon as you can. Fast forward 1 week. Okay, so it's Module 1, Day 1, and you now have access to your first week right here on the module homepage. Let's take a closer look. Each unit of content in your course has been carefully designed to give you the flexibility to fit your studies in and around the rest of your life, whilst also ensuring that you get the perfect balance of acquiring new knowledge through case studies, guest lectures, interviews or podcasts, reinforcing that knowledge in discussion activities and self-reflective exercises, and applying that knowledge to perform research tasks, build a portfolio, problem solve in real-world scenarios, or complete collaborative projects. Throughout your course, you will also master independent study and research skills that will serve you well when completing your assignments, planning your dissertation or final major project, and ultimately in any future professional or academic setting. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We hope you found this preview useful and have enjoyed this little taster of what's to come, and we look forward to meeting you at the start of your course.
Okay, I would like to finish this presentation with what I believe is our most important ingredient, the students. Our students are spread around the world. I mentioned at the beginning we cover over 71 different countries at the moment throughout all our student cohorts, and they take our courses on a part-time basis while they continue to work and they lead very busy lives. They often relocate countries while studying, and that quote from a student on the screen, I thought was a very interesting one, because this student moved jobs 3 different times while doing the course and had to move countries twice during the course. And if he had been in a traditional education establishment, he would have had to abandon the course halfway through in order to take his next career stage. And because he had access to this flexible way of education, he didn't have to, and he completed successfully. The diversity of our student body brings an amazing richness to the online classrooms. And furthermore, I think the fact that the students are not physically based in a common geography creates additional learning opportunities for all the students in the cohort. This is not a monodirectional education. It is an education that brings the experiences of all the students into the learning process. They bring their cultural capital into those courses. And as they discuss the theories and we present the theories and we give them challenges, each of those students that are based in different countries, they contextualize those activities. They take those theories in and they put them into the context in which they operate. And that's incredibly valuable to all the other students because they can see how the same concept, the same theory is put into practice in different ways in different countries, depending on the context in which they operate. That's incredibly valuable to the students, and it creates a really rich learning experience. So in some respects, this online learning education that we are aiming to provide to these students, not only it matches the quality they would get on campus, in some aspects is actually improving on that quality by giving them access to a richer learning experience because they're spread around the world and they can share those experiences together. So that's everything from me. Thank you so much for your attention. You can find further information about our work, our university partners, the courses that we run, on those details you have on the screen. More than happy for you to contact me by email if you have got any questions. And thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Professor Frutos-Perez, for your very good presentation, very attractive presentation of an active structured learning model. In order to keep control over our limited time resources, I propose that we pass to the next speaker, and then, and to be fair in relation with all speakers, and then at the end of the presentations, we'll have the interactive dialogue. So keep notes of your possible question, and then we can ask those questions individually, the members of the panels, or all three together. So the next invitees today is Joanna Stroud, who is a distance and online education advisor at the University College of London. She manages public-facing learning environment and executive education purposes and other acronyms that I'm not able to read at this point in time. So for the time's sake, I would invite Joanna to take the floor.
Okay, so I would also like to say thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you today. As suggested, I lead development of online education at UCL. That's just one facet of what we do. But I'm going to try and give you a slightly broader insight into what we do at the institution today. So in terms of what I'm going to cover, this feels like possibly too much to fit into the next 15 minutes or so now, but it will be sort of covered briefly at each stage. So I'm going to give you a basic introduction to what education is all about at UCL. I'm going to provide a basic overview of our blended and online learning provision. I'm going to highlight some of our delivery models, our platforms and technologies, the pedagogic and policy frameworks that we have set up and now use there, and then give you an illustrative case study of something that we are spending a lot of our time on this year. So in terms of the way that we approach education at UCL, just to give you a bit of a background to who UCL is first, we are a very large and diverse higher education institution based in central London, right in the heart of Bloomsbury. We have 42 or 43,000 students, I think, and more than half of those are at the postgraduate level. And we have a very wide range of academic disciplines as well, so everything from fine art to medicine, law to engineering, physics, and so on. In terms of our education strategy, we're looking to promote UCL as a global leader in the integration of research and education. bringing the two things together is very, very important to us. And in terms of what that means, we think that the sort of strategy is visible, or at least felt, at really every level of our education provision. In terms of what UCL does, I think that our offer is split into two separate pathways. So the first of those is the sort of traditional context, where you will see very recognisable sorts of degree programmes, 3-year undergraduate, postgraduate taught programmes that last 1 or 2 years. Some of them are offered part-time, most of them not. And then postgraduate research degrees. Now, students within that traditional context, they're all formally enrolled as UCL students. They pay fees to UCL, and they accrue academic credit with us as well. The other context that we have is public and online and open education, whereby learners aren't formally recognised as our students. They may or may not pay fees, and they don't necessarily gain a recognised award, but there might be some accreditation involved. So the first context that I'm going to talk about is the traditional one, because to be completely honest with you, that is what UCL is focused on. The majority of what we offer is delivered on campus here in London. We have something like 200 undergraduate programmes, 500 postgraduate taught programmes, and 150 postgraduate research degrees. That equates to about 6,000 modules in total, but only about 50 online or distance education programmes, and they are all offered at the postgraduate level. Now, that is something that is growing quite quickly at the moment, and we don't have any sort of legacy correspondence courses. They are all delivered online. So it's changing quite a bit, but it still makes up a very small part of what we do. The public context is a little bit more diverse. So the short course space sees a far greater proportion of its activity taking place in a blended capacity or online. And all of those courses are open to the general public. So for the most part, they don't require any specific prerequisites, and anyone can take them. We also have roughly 20 open online courses or MOOCs. We've had about 150,000 people sign up to those to date. I think the maximum number of countries that we've reached with them is, I think, about 160, but we have roughly 120 countries represented on each of those course runs. Now, with the MOOCs specifically, we deliver those across a number of disciplinary areas for which UCL is internationally recognised. So it's disciplines like the dementias and urban planning, surgical practice, education, that kind of thing. The other thing that we... that's right. In terms of the delivery models that we offer, as I've said, we are quite focused on what we do based in London, and the majority of that is face-to-face delivery. We term everything that we do face-to-face blended, because every single module that we have has an online presence in one way or another, although some make use of online tools to a greater degree than other courses. We also have this sort of small but growing number of fully online courses. Some have residential components, some don't. It very much depends on the discipline. So with postgraduate programs in dentistry, we might do the majority of the work online, but then there is practical training that is, very difficult to facilitate at a distance, so people may come to London for that. And then the other model that we have is this sort of mixed delivery type approach. These are courses that are primarily housed at the Institute of Education, but we bring in students to learn in London and online at exactly the same time, so they're all part of the same lectures. It's quite an interesting way to do things, and it works pretty well for them. In terms of the degree of interaction within our online courses specifically, that can be very variable based on the sort of needs of the cohort. We try to design quite sensitively based on the audience that we're attempting to attract, and that by extension means that we have varying degrees of interaction. The majority of our taught online courses incorporate, quite a lot of multimedia content, and then a range of sort of synchronous and asynchronous activities based on who it is that we're trying to reach. Some courses do occupy a more sort of self-directed study model, but that's, a good example that we have for that is a master's program in perioperative medicine, which is targeted towards anaesthetists who are on, really variable, unpredictable shift patterns. So some of them may be attempting to complete their course studies at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and nobody really wants to teach at that time. So it makes sense for a good proportion of their material to be delivered on a self-directed basis. In terms of the platforms and technologies that we use, we've got, again, slightly different offerings for the traditional and the public context. So the primary virtual learning environment that we use at UCL is Moodle, and the reason that was selected is that it's an open source platform, has a global community of users in place to support it. We supplement that environment with a range of proprietary or commercial tools. So for different parts of the student learning cycle, we might have Turnitin for assignment submission and academic integrity, and things like Blackboard Collaborate for synchronous online learning in just taking place online. All of the courses delivered via our internal UCL Moodle instance are credit-bearing, so that's why it's linked to this traditional context, and only UCL staff and students can house the information that's contained within that environment. The public context is a little bit different. It is, again, a Moodle environment, but it's a completely separate and visually distinct instance. It uses similar proprietary tools, but we have some others like H5P, which is another open source content delivery mechanism, and the reason for that is because we do a lot more online in that space. The UCL Extend environment facilitates delivery of non-credit bearing courses, so that's why it's a little bit different. It's for our public offering, and that means that anybody can come and access a course contained there. And we do lots of different things with it. So the majority of the courses there are in place for CPD purposes, but we've got things for executive education, activities for prospective applicants in a widening access context, and all sorts of different things like that. Now, another thing that sort of bridges both of these different contexts is partnerships that we have with external organisations. So the first of those is where we want to deliver MOOCs, massive online open courses, and we do that with both FutureLearn and Coursera. The platforms and tools that we use as part of those partnerships are not developed by UCL, but all of the courses, the subject matter, the material that's developed and so on, that is all done by UCL. The other external partnership that we have now entered is with a United States-based OPM, which is an online program management company, and we are launching a fully online MBA program with them in September. It's a very different kind of partnership because the overwhelming majority of the work is done by them. We supply content and we teach it, but that is about it. Moving on to pedagogic and policy frameworks. UCL have developed a range of these kinds of tools in order to support their own staff in development of both blended and online courses. The three that I'm going to reference here are all embedded as part of UCL's educational policy, and they operate hierarchically within that structure. The first of these that we have is something called the connected curriculum. So it has 6 dimensions of connectivity that serve to define the relationship between students' learning and their participation in research, but it also describes the connections between specific disciplines, years of study, and staff and students themselves. The idea is that we create a more holistic educational approach with it. All material relating to the connected curriculum is openly accessible, including an open access book that anybody can go and download for free. And there are a range of illustrative case studies that demonstrate how the framework work as part of that. At the next level, we have something called ABC Learning Design, which is both a framework but also a facilitated workshop where course teams come together to enter some dialogue and work together to create a visual storyboard for what they want their modules, programs, short courses, whatever, to look like in the future. Now, as part of that storyboarding exercise, staff will discuss what kinds of learning activities they want to employ, whether they're online or offline, the sequence, the type, and what they want the course to look like in the future. It's very practical, it's card-based, and it integrates the concept of learning types from Professor Diana Laurelard's conversational framework. The learning types are outlined on one side of the card, so we have acquisition, collaboration, discussion, investigation, practice and production. And on the other side of the cards, there are a range of both sort of traditional and digital learning activities that you might use to facilitate any of those learning types. Again, the material for that for the workshop is all Creative Commons license. Anybody can go and download it and use it, but we do also facilitate the workshops at another number of other institutions internationally at this stage. The most granular policy that we have in place is something called the e-learning baseline and baseline plus. I'm not going to talk about this a huge amount, but what it does is it sets out minimum expected practice for digital education provision across both programs and modules. It focuses on platforms like Moodle, but it's there to help articulate good practice and provide a little bit of guidance for how to do things well. The one sort of 2018-19 initiative that I'm going to talk about briefly, we've got quite a lot of different things that we're doing at the moment, but the one that I think is most relevant today is promotion of open educational practices at UCL. Now, there's significant literature that discusses the aims of and activities that are contained within the open education movement, and I'm not going to go into them today. Open is a sort of umbrella term for lots and lots of different things. It might be simple resources, it might be a whole course, it could be an entire institution. I know that we have somebody, I think we have someone here from the Open University today, or it could be a sort of philosophical way of working. We're looking to promote open educational practices at UCL because we're starting to feel a little bit worried by the sort of threat of marketisation, not just at UCL, but across higher education more broadly. And we're looking to promote these kinds of practices in order to enhance education, but to connect the world openly to conversations about UCL knowledge and to position knowledge as a public good rather than a commodity. In order to do that, some of the practical things that we're doing are delivery of open courses, but also provision of open educational resources. And the way that we do this is by targeting both the UCL vision, but also these things called grand challenges that we have at UCL. Our grand challenges are intrinsically linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, and they support cross-disciplinary research activity, which is a key part of what we're trying to do. The disciplinary areas that we're focusing on as part of this include things like global health, sustainable cities, transformative technologies, justice and inequality, that kind of thing. And open courses and OER are one way that we can seek to target those. A case study that I have just to talk to you about that illustrates this is something called Development and Planning in African Cities, which was an open online course that we launched in the middle of last year, and some OER that we also provided as part of that experience. Now, the course itself was an international collaboration between UCL and Njala University in Sierra Leone. The course material has a really strong focus on theory and research that was produced by a research centre called the Sierra Leone Urban Research Centre, and it targets one of our specific global challenges, which is sustainable cities. So the course was previously offered in both the UK by UCL and in Sierra Leone as a face-to-face intensive course. It's been really, really successful, but it was heavily oversubscribed. And what we were very regularly told was that there was, significant opportunity cost, both in terms of money and time, in terms of taking time away from work to study. On that basis, bringing the course online offered the opportunity, to meet the demand that was in place for it, but also to open access and enable reuse of the sort of rich testimony that we brought together, not just for staff from UCL, but also in-country experts and others. The material for the course was designed with the sort of practical limitations of some settings in mind. So we did things like minimise the use of video, to avoid using up too much bandwidth. And we also employed principles of universal design, using simple, straightforward language, simple learning outcomes, that kind of thing, in order to promote accessibility. However, one of the other things that the course team did very well was attempt to promote open pedagogic practice, so that the learning experience itself was more inclusive. Freetown in Sierra Leone was used as a sort of unifying case study for all of the theory contained within the course, and it served to provide a point of focus for those who maybe didn't have a specific domain or professional knowledge of the topics that were being covered. We had things like peer-assessed tasks that invited learners to discuss, research and report upon concepts in their own context, but wherever they were in the world and with whatever experience they had. The final thing that we did with this course was made full course open educational resources available to enable individuals to not only reuse those course materials, but potentially localise them for their own specific urban contexts. In other examples, we've done things like translated the majority of the course, but in some cases just by ourselves, in others with other local actors, but we've begun to recognise that that's just such a small part of what needs to be done in order to promote that kind of localisation. There's a huge amount that we need to learn about and to do in terms of sourcing contextually and culturally, even pedagogically appropriate material and learning design patterns, and we'd like to produce some kind of framework or guidance that better supports those efforts in collaboration with other institutional partners, including people like yourselves who are here today. So I've covered quite a lot of material very, very quickly there. Again, I'm very happy to speak to anybody in the breaks today, and you're very welcome to get in touch with me directly at UCL, but that's hopefully a little insight into what we are currently doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, for your very comprehensive presentation and for your recipe of almost perfect mix between online and blended learning, and in particular for keeping within the 15 minutes with the Swiss precision. We come from Switzerland. Now, the next panelist is Andrew Law, Director to the Open University United Kingdom, in charge with open and informal learning. He leads the strategy and delivery of the Open University's public online learning. He is responsible for public learning platforms, including Open Learn and the development of Future Learn, and as well as other content-syndicated activities. So let us abide by the law for a while. You have the floor.
Thank you. Wow, I wish I was the director of the Open University. No, I'm only a director of a small part of it. Thank you so much for your attention and still staying with us. In about 5 minutes' time, there's a load of free stuff that's going to be given away. So if you can make it through the next 5 minutes, you get free stuff. It's amazing to be on amongst you, but also a panel of such prestigious universities. The Open University is not quite in the same league in terms of research prestige as Cambridge or UCL, but we have a very different take on lots of things, although there are lots and lots of really strong similarities. So yeah, I'm not the director of the Open University. The
next panelist is Andrew Law, Director to the Open University United Kingdom, in charge with open and informal learning. He leads the strategy and delivery of the Open University's public online learning. He is responsible for public learning platforms, including Open Learn and the development of Future Learn, and as well as other content-syndicated activities. So let us abide by the law for a while. You have the floor.
Thank you. Wow, I wish I was the director of the Open University. No, I'm only a director of a small part of it. Thank you so much for your attention and still staying with us. In about 5 minutes' time, there's a load of free stuff that's going to be given away. So if you can make it through the next 5 minutes, you get free stuff. It's amazing to be on amongst you, but also a panel of such prestigious universities. The Open University is not quite in the same league in terms of research prestige as Cambridge or UCL, but we have a very different take on lots of things, although there are lots and lots of really strong similarities. So Yeah, I'm not the director of the Open University. Let's just make sure that's clear on record. Just look after some of their open stuff and some of their business development. Few minutes on what the Open University is for those that don't know or have an Open University in their own country. Ours is a little different. 50 years old this year, with the largest university in Europe, 175,000 graduates or undergraduates, about 20% are doing postgraduate with us. But most people are studying part-time, and everybody is studying online. Doesn't mean you don't get a tutor, doesn't mean you don't get books, but you study online with the Open University. We have no entry qualifications for our undergraduate programs. You can come to us with any level of education. We will take you in. Makes our life quite challenging, but also very stimulating and rewarding experience. We're getting a younger and younger group of learners with us, increasingly so. Most of our learners are now in the 25 to 35-year brackets. They are struggling, probably in work, and realizing they need a qualification, and that's who we're targeting. 1 in 8 have a disability or declare a disability of some form. Again, very high proportion. We target those that are excluded from education, from traditional education, and we design systems that work particularly well for them. We hope, we think. As I say, 3 in 4 students are actually already in work, but they're aiming to make the progression within work to their next step. And employers quite like us, got a lot of industrial sponsorship and a lot of industrially sponsored students. Learning at the OU, so again, make this distinction between informal learners, not studying for credit, and formal learners. Those 174,000 students are studying with us for their degree or their master's or their PhD. We have research students as well. 130 degree programs, 450 modules, smaller than our colleagues here in terms of numbers of modules, but probably larger in terms of numbers of students. People studying between 8 and 10 hours a week, but studying in a really wide range of context, including in prison and in submarines. So we have to design our technology so that it penetrates to places that bandwidth doesn't get and the internet doesn't get. You do get a tutor, you get pastoral support, and you get tutor support. Completely agree with colleagues here. Studying on your own is not a very effective thing. Studying socially and with proper support is absolutely critical. So groups of about 25 are typical for our study groups. We also use Moodle, very big developers of Moodle, both internally and externally. And we don't use Blackboard, we use Adobe as our tutoring system that sits alongside it. We think that works very well for our students, but other systems are also available. The big thing for us is we are entirely online. Millions and millions and millions of transactions every week. A lot of processing, a massive IT department, a very, very significant contribution to the platform development world, particularly Moodle, but others as well. Our Moodle looks like some other Moodles, but not all other Moodles. We have a special form of Moodle which we've developed. It's quite sophisticated, mobile ready, runs offline, and we have a tutoring system. Happy to talk about these outside of the session if you want to after this. The critical thing about being open at the Open University is not simply that we take people onto our degree programs without qualifications. We also deal with the public in a very massive way. We developed both Open Learn and Future Learn. Future Learn is our big commercial channel. It's a company. It's going to make money. It is making money. It's very much aimed at quite a well-educated audience. The courses are free, but the certificates are for fee. About 9 million people a year, 9 million people in total have come to Future Learn, very much aimed at a confident online learner, aiming at continuing professional development, probably moving on to a postgraduate position at another university, possibly ours, but we have 200 university partners sitting on Future Learn, including some of the people at the table here and many others around the world. But do remember, it's not our content. There's some of our content on there. We're a big supplier to the platform. It's mostly other universities' content on that system, and the user pays for the certificate at the end. What people know less about, remember 8 million people come to Future Learn, 60 million people have come to Open Learn. About 8 million people every year come to OpenLearn. That's our Moodle in the public domain. That's an open Moodle system. There's 1,000 courses on it. The courses are for free, and so are the certificates. So there is no monetization engine sitting on OpenLearn. OpenLearn is a Moodle-based system with Creative Commons courses from the Open University sitting on it, not for academic credit, but there are 1,000 courses that you can take on OpenLearn. Some of the courses on FutureLearn that we've produced, although our colleagues will have many, many more courses on there as well. Range of subjects. On OpenLearn, it's a slightly different story, only our courses. We only point at ourselves as part of the next point in the destination. Most people don't want to come inside the Open University, they just want to do the free courses. That's absolutely fine. Not just courses, videos, podcasts, articles, games, simulations, lots of things. So not just courses, a very gradual slope. This learning platform is aimed particularly at the non-confident. More than 50% of the people that come to OpenLearn do not have a degree. About 80% of people that come to a MOOC platform will have a degree. So this is targeted at the less confident learner. And we tend to say bite-sized to banquet. There are 2-minute items on there, and there are 50-hour courses on there. Lots of materials, and I'll give you the URLs in a minute if you want to go and have a look. Thousands of courses, each one's labeled with a level and whether you get a badge with it. You get a certificate on all the courses if you complete them. Wide range of courses. Can start the course at any time, can do it at any rate. You don't have to wait for registration period. You don't have to sign in. You don't even have to give us your email address. You can take the course without signing in. If you sign in, you can get a badge or a certificate. You can, and this is critical from our perspective, you can download the course. For all of the work that we do in the UK and the work that we do with other partners outside of the UK, an offline version of the course seems critical to us. Not everybody has bandwidth, not everybody has access to continuous access to a computer. So on our Moodle platforms, we always provide an offline alternative so you can study the course without having to go online all of the time. You do get certificates on OpenLearn. On some of the courses, you get little electronic badges, and you get to build a profile as you would on FutureLearn or any of the other big MOOC engines. So in a minute, I'll show you where to find that content if you want to use it. The more radical way of being open is not just giving our content away, but giving our systems away. I am not giving away FutureLearn. FutureLearn is a commercial company. Its code is locked down. It is there in order to monetize, as well as bring in a broader audience. However, the version of Moodle which we've developed, we have released into the open to release our own courses, but we've released another version of it as well. And on that, we don't put anything. You do. So OpenLearn Create is a Moodle platform similar to OpenLearn. It's a free Moodle system. You pay nothing to go to it and use the courses there, and you pay nothing to make a course there. If you don't know how to make a course, there are courses about how to make courses. If you don't know how to tutor a course, there are courses about how to tutor a course. If you don't know what an OER is, there are courses about what OERs are and how to work with them. So it is an open learning platform based on Moodle, which we support, and anybody can produce a free course there. If you produce a free course there, you have to release your course for free into the public domain. You cannot build a private course there. You can, but you have to come and talk to me with my business hat on, and then we close your course for you. But the Indian government, Bangladeshi government, a wide range of other NGOs are building courses on this platform because it's free and it's open, and you can build whatever you want on there, as long as it's education and it's released for free. Has badges, has certificates, you can manage your course, you can collect data about your learners as long as you sign an agreement with us that you promise to keep the data managed in an appropriate way. You can monitor your students as they're making progress on the course. You can launch forums. So we also believe absolutely social is critically important to learning. So you can launch a forum. Unfortunately, not at this stage a full tutorial, but you can launch an asynchronous forum so people can talk to each other and their tutor about the course that they're studying. And Joanna talked about open educational practices. So alongside the content on OpenLearn, the platform of Open Learn Create, we also have an OER hub, an evidence hub, where we've collected all the research we've undertaken for the last 10 or so years about what works in education, in open education practice, and what doesn't work. And that hub is, again, full of free content, case studies, and data about open educational practice. That's where the URLs are if you need to get them and copy them or get stuff, and do feel free to contact me afterwards if there's any interest in any of those free platforms. Did I stick to 15 minutes? Close enough. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Indeed, very impressive figures. And what I liked most was your effort to adjust the technology to the needs of beneficiary, and in particular this free-for-use platform. That's a very good news, and I think we shall consider it with attention. Dear colleagues, now you have heard two exceptional presentation, very diverse offers, but at the same time, I think there are many things in common. I think the philosophy of e-learning is shared more or less in the same way by the three speakers, but I would like to invite you to ask questions to our distinguished panelists. Please press the button until it gets red, then introduce yourself and ask the question. It may be addressed to one of the panelists or to all of them. The floor is open.
I'm Dr. Hema from Ministry of Higher Education, Sultanate of Oman. This question is common for any three panelists. Anyone can answer. How is your organizations going to deal with the ethical considerations in the various assessment process?
Happy to start the answer, and then my colleagues can join me afterwards. Yes, the issue of assessment online is a really important one. And I would take it back to the issue of assessment on normal on-campus education. Over the last 10 years, we have learned so much, and our pedagogies have developed really far and quick, and our understanding of how people learn and how we can make those things happen in a classroom has really moved on. And some of the teaching and learning practices you see in universities on campus have changed quite a lot. But the assessment practice hasn't changed at all. We're still assessing students the same way we were assessing them 40 years ago on campus. So the issue of assessment is something we, as educators, we really need to pay more attention to. We need to change the way in which we assess students on campus, and we need to apply that best practice when we do that online. In terms of how do we do that, one of the biggest issues confronted by universities at the moment in terms of assessment is plagiarism. And some technology companies have made enormous amounts of money because of that. My point as an educator is we need to design the plagiarism element out of the assessment process. This is not something that technology is going to solve for us. We need to develop new ways of assessing student competencies that will mean that there is no point in plagiarizing, because they won't be able to, because if it's a participatory assessment, they cannot fake that is their assessment because they are participating in it. And one of the ways in which you do this online is by creating group assessments, getting the students to work together, and you give them credit for the process, not just the outcome. Obviously, you give them credit for the outcome, but you also give them credit for the process, how they were learning while they were doing the assessment. That's something really important.
Oh, okay. So I agree with that. We also use both peer assessment and group work as part of the assessment process. That doesn't actually overcome the problem of how you're going to monitor it and make it secure. So, but certainly peer assessment and the assessment of group processes is part of a lot of undergraduate activity and some postgraduate activity at the Open University. I think it's probably worth separating out formative assessment from summative assessment as well. So the summative assessment at the Open University and undergraduate programs, the final piece of work is often still a fairly traditional exam, performed in a particular location around the world. So we do exams around the world. But a lot of formative assessment can be done online. I mean, we're using Turnitin as well and plagiarism checkers. There's lots of machine-led activity that we can provide feedback to our learners on as they're building up their confidence. Part of assessment is not just, does this person know what they're supposed to know, but are they making progress, real progress towards it, and do they feel confident in that? And actually the machine can provide quite a lot of feedback. Artificial intelligence systems can mark open-ended content. Quiz-based systems can be quite sophisticated these days and can provide a lot of ongoing formative assessment on a massive scale. Of those 2 million transactions with the servers a day at the Open University, many of them are transactions around questions that are being asked by the machine of the student. But they are mostly in the formative assessment mode rather than the summative assessment mode. We still do a lot of exams on location.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't have a great deal to add to that. The idea of designing out things like plagiarism by designing new kinds of assessments is something that we are very much engaged with as well. At the Institute of Education, for example, which is the education school of UCL, particularly with online programs, we have looked to move away from an exam-based model by focusing more on coursework, by thinking more about the split between formative and summative assessment, and actually chunking assessments throughout a program so that it isn't all focused, everything isn't directed, right at the end of the course. So it's a very similar thing to what colleagues are describing, but it's just about designing new approaches to assessment that aren't reliant on things like tools to proctor exams and so on. It's about doing things a little bit differently.
Thank you, Joanna. Back to the audience.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. My name is Sadiq Musa. I'm from Multimedia University. Some countries, they don't recognize online education, especially in the Gulf countries. This is one of the big challenge. I don't know how you overcome this. Then, secondly, some program is considered to be just selling certificates. It's not real education. I don't know how you solve this challenge. So the other two challenges actually facing the online education.
So, how much of this bit's being recorded?
All of it.
So, there are a lot of open universities around the world, and not all of them have the same reputation as each other or us. And there's no question, we're 50 years old this year. We were, most universities in the UK are 100, some of them are 500 years old. We had a major challenge to persuade the population that you could study, particularly if we have no entry qualifications whatsoever, to persuade the British public that this was a degree worth having. There is no question, even after 50 years, we carry a legacy of being very nervous that the quality of our exams, the quality of our teaching, and the quality of the degrees is as good as any other university. Employers notice it, and it's not a problem. I think you need to be very careful in looking at some of the other online learning providers around the world and think that they are a model of best practice. Not because they're not necessarily, but because it could leave you in a very complacent position while Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Google, Apple, major employers, major universities, Cambridge, UCL, Oxford, all go online. And they've been going online in the last 5 years on a very significant scale. The Open University could never have believed it would be in partnership with some of the most prestigious universities around the world by launching an online platform. It is now, and it's shifted the perspective and sense of confidence I think that we have about what we do. So be very, very wary of potential government complacency that somehow online learning is not good enough. If you need to do anything, look at the US and ask yourself the question whether if Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and MIT, and Cambridge, and UCL are all involved in it, whether there might be something that's worth considering. It can be done very badly, even by great institutions, and we can do it really badly as well, and we have done. But please don't think, I think the tide around online learning may be shifting. It will ebb and flow. There will be problems with it. But there is a real danger that somehow the game with online learning is up. It was over 10 years ago. It's really, my personal position is it's really not.
Any other? Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I completely agree with. And you're absolutely right. There are parts of the world where online education has been tainted with this is a second-class type of education. And the reason for that is, I alluded in my presentation, is because in the early days of online learning, most of it was done really badly. So online learning very rapidly got this reputation of being, okay, if you cannot do proper education, you do it online. So how do we counter that? By offering quality. The only way out of that is actually delivering courses that have got the highest quality standards possible. Our motto in Cambridge Education Group when we do online courses is the course at the end of it is got to be of equivalent quality of a course on campus or higher. If we cannot deliver the same quality as we would on campus, we will not do that program. And I think that's the way to overcome that problem. And Andrew alluded to it, it's all about provenance. And that's why we partner with other universities and we make sure that these are always courses that have got the backing of an academic team with reputation, with research profiles. This is an education that is of equal quality. It will take time to overcome those problems that were created in the early days of online learning, but we're working towards that.
I completely agree with what other panellists are saying. From a slightly more practical perspective, at UCL, lots of our online short courses are non-credit bearing. You don't get a degree, you don't get any credit whatsoever, and yet in some contexts, people would, it would be completely understandable for people to debate their validity on that basis. However, something that we've worked quite hard to do in the last couple of years is to accredit those courses in other ways. So we have short courses for continuing professional development purposes that are accredited by specific professional bodies, both in the United Kingdom but internationally as well. So we have a course around perioperative medicine at the moment that is accredited by the Royal College of Anaesthetists based in London, but it also has accreditation from the relevant, the sort of aligned body in India and in Colombia. And on that basis, people taking those courses are recognised by their, their professional association. So it isn't for UCL credit, it doesn't translate to an award, but there is validity provided to it in that way as well. This isn't something that we just go out and try to get, just a badge that we're putting on the course. If we go after that kind of accreditation, we work with that professional body in order to ensure that it's meeting the kinds of skills gaps or needs that are present within their country. So it's doing things in an alternative way. It's not a university degree, but there is still some form of validation that's applied to it.
I have another potentially, don't recall, no, I'll say it anyway, potentially dangerous thing to say, which is, and it's a bit of a challenge, if you don't believe in online learning and you're a traditional provider outside of the US and possibly outside of China and possibly outside of Europe, you are in deep danger, because the other downside to the other very large elite organizations getting into online university, online provision, is that it's a global movement. and it is in severe danger unless you grip and own your own solution to online learning. You are in, I think, it's a warning, I think you're in real danger of a global movement of online provision in which you are not part. And that is a real problem for anybody that cares about a really culturally rich, culturally sensitive, locally sensitive education provision. Because unless this provision is open and inclusive, we're going to have monoliths of providing of higher education providing. So I think a major shift over the next 5 years is doing anything we can to encourage local provision of online capacity building, which I think why so many people around this group are doing not just the provision of learning and systems, but trying to make sure the capacity to generate solutions locally is there. Otherwise, there will be, there will be 5 degrees you can take.
Thank you, dear panelists. I think that already the 3 universities represented at this panel are very convincing and eloquent. I think they are already on top of your preference list. I have to confess that I, as a coordinator of a GIU review on learning, I picked up the MOOC course myself. And the only regret I have that I didn't wait for this roundtable to make my choice, but I'm sure that they will be on my list of preferences. Madam, you have the floor now, and then the gentleman in the third row.
Thank you. My name is Sumaya Ibrahim. I'm working at Paddington Development Trust, organization based in West London. Delivery course is City and Guild qualification up to level 4. And the majority of our students, they didn't get a chance to go for university, and they want to join, just to do, because some of them, they have a degree back home, but they are very interested to continue the education here. My question is for those people who are delivering online courses. Do you have any possibility to link with our organization to your university, just transfer the student, those people who are finished level 4, we can give them hope to go and do their degree. Thank you.
Who wants to respond first?
Yeah, I'm happy to start answer. Yes, one of the things about online learning is that you are most of the time dealing with atypical learners. So these, in our experience, because most of what we do is postgraduate education, these are learners that don't have traditional qualifications, many of them. They have got a lot of working experience. Some of them did attend university, some of them completed their original BA course, some of them didn't. So when you are going through the admissions process has to be robust to make sure that the learners you're letting into a program, they will be able to succeed. But at the same time, it has to be flexible. You have to recognize that those online learners are not going to come with traditional entry qualifications, and you have to make different judgments for those learners. So yes, many of our students don't have what would be a traditional entry requirement for a master's course, but they do go through scrutiny at the admissions level by the different university partners that we work with, and they are admitted. So yes, at that level, that's changing too, and I'm sure Andrew has got a lot to say about entry requirements. We live in a new paradigm in terms of education. The world wants to be educated. The world is demanding quality education. And we, as educators, we've got a responsibility to make sure that we open the reach of that education. And within my own context, one of the things that I'm really proud of is the diversity of the student body that we have in our programs, because I can see that as an educator, I can see how much that benefits the students and how that educational experience is really benefiting wherever those students are located. We help them identify what are their local ways of doing things within the same theory and concepts. That's really valuable for them and for the rest of the cohort. So the more we can do to deliver a wider access to education, the better position we are going to be as societies.
I can't offer a huge amount of hope on the UCL front. To be completely honest with you, it's an elite institution with very high entry offers for the most part. However, our widening access team in the last couple of years has established something called a contextual offers program, whereby people who come from non-traditional backgrounds can get a favourable offer based on completing various activities with the university. Now, the majority of those are actually being offered online as part of courses now, and they're open to people whether they choose to indicate that UCL will be their firm, like their first choice university or not. So the programme itself is called Access UCL. There's something called a preparation for academic study programme that's delivered online and is available to anybody who wants to take it up before you move on to a next stage. So I'm hopeful that that might get a little bit better in the future, but we're at a very basic level at the moment. I think we've got somebody from King's after the break. They're doing it a lot better than the UCL are at this stage. It might be good to flag your students to them as well, but
so was the question about people already who have a degree but who need some recognition of that? They need a UK degree. Okay, so they don't really want to do another degree. Okay. Okay, so the good news is at the Open University we have no entry requirements, but you start your degree from scratch. The other good news at the Open University is, and it's a little bit more complicated, is if you bring us some qualifications and we can see what they are, you can articulate in, you can jump ahead. Now, it will depend on whether we've got a relationship and knowledge of the university that they're coming from, whether we can convert them in, but we may be a good place to start. So there is a group that deals with people with prior learning experience that we might still feel it needs topping up with something. We very proudly hold on to the quality of our degrees, and we don't want to be seen to just go, anybody can come in, but you start from scratch.
From there to do these courses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a microphone on.
Yeah, it's open.
Okay, so grab me afterwards. There is definitely a group, I don't know in detail how it operates, but there is a group at the university that specialises in working out how somebody with a substantial existing piece of knowledge can be converted in to gain a full degree. It is still a process that needs to go through. It's not a rubber stamping process. They are going to have to do some more work, but they may not have to do all of the work again in order to do it. So we have articulation agreements in place, and we can certainly talk about it, but we'll need to contact afterwards.
Okay, I will take the last two questions for gender balance, the gentleman on the center and the lady, and the ladies on my right, so the last three questions, and then Professor Alam, obviously, yeah, okay. So I would ask you I would invite you to ask the questions, and then we'll respond to all the three of them, and then to end the process, I will invite Professor Alam. So, sir, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dejan Davis from University of East London. My question is, what mechanisms do you have in place to engage other institutions and governments, especially in the Global South, to start to provide e-learning platforms for primary education and secondary education to get people prepared and get that feel of e-learning before they can enter into higher education? What mechanisms do you have in place? Thank you.
Lady with the red sharp. Yes, you, madam, please.
It's not a question. My name is Prudence. I'm a sorry, I just wanted to testify about the efficiency and the support I've got from distant learning, and I've only got 2 modules left to complete the early years program, and I can testify that it is really excellent. And I've got a lot of support.
Thank you very much. Lady in the front.
Okay. Good afternoon. Well, I would like to thank you for your presentations. I am Janice Lalu from the University of East London. And my question goes to Mr. Andrew Law. You mentioned that anyone could create an online course. And I was wondering how you assess the quality of the content of that course and also the capabilities of the tutor.
Thank you. I think the congratulations are all taken by all 3 speakers, so thank you very much. The other questions were addressed. I don't know who is better qualified to respond to the question on the primary and secondary education mechanisms to get them familiar with.
Well, primary and secondary, TESS Africa and TESS India are teacher training programs delivered on Open Learn Create in 10 languages aimed at primary school teachers and secondary school teachers. They're some of the largest teacher training programs in the world, sponsored by DFID in sub-Saharan Africa and in India. There's a similar one in Bangladesh. So you can find content on Open Learn Create for teacher trainers using online provision. There will be lots more. It's just an example. Prudence, well done. Good, thank you. I'm glad it's going well. And sorry, we'll come back. Should we just deal with that question, or shall I just finish?
No, continue.
So the question about quality control on Open Learn Create, 0, absolutely none. We do absolutely nothing to quality control the content on that platform, which is why we do not put our brand on it and why we don't put our content on there. However, the content is great because it's not spam. This is a place where educators are turning up and wanting to do stuff. You know, Wikipedia is still one of the most accurate information sources in the world. It's controlled by the crowd. We aim Open Learn Create to be the same, but it's not our job. It's the community's job to see a course and say, this is bad, and put bad stars against it, or to see a course and go, I can make that better, and to copy it and make it better. So we provide no quality control over the content there. We do provide courses about how to write courses, how to make good courses, but we're treating the crowd with crowd respect. I think they have to make those decisions for themselves. If you have curators that start to pull this together, the curators start to own it, they start to globalize the market again. It's a risk, but to us it's done us no harm. There's a report of concern button everywhere. If anybody's doing anything they shouldn't be, they get kicked off. But make a kind of very explicit point, no quality control, which sounds worrying because we're really worried about quality on our own programs, which we crawl over. But bear in mind, we run that platform for nothing.
Yes, Joanna.
In terms of the primary and secondary education question, the 2 examples that immediately sprung to mind to me were TESS India and TESS Africa. At UCL, we don't have anything explicitly targeted towards those outcomes that I can think of. There is something called the Relief Centre, which is a project involved in delivering educational projects to sort of conflict settings and things like that at the moment. And we, to give you a sort of shameless plug, we have a Future Learn course starting in a couple of weeks called Transforming Education in Challenging Environments, which focuses on digital education projects from both the tutor and student perspective, and some OER will be available alongside that. But other than that, I think TESS India and TESS Africa are the 2 best examples that I can think of in terms of promoting that kind of thing in the Global South.
Yes, I would corroborate that. And so Cambridge Education Group, we don't do at the moment anything in terms of primary, secondary education. What we do is we have got, in partnership with Falmouth University, an online postgraduate certificate for university lecturers. So this is for people who work in the university sector and they want to qualify to gain a qualification in teaching online. So that's a course we already have got out there in order to help people embrace this new medium, this new way of doing things online.
Thank you. Professor Alam, you already consented to shorten the coffee break, so you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I'm just following what is going on in the live. By the way, the live is going extremely very clear. I think most of the comments going to Africa, the best one to describe it says, online learning platform is the solution for African region. So you can see people in the south, they really see the value of this. It just happened, I've been involved with the the open, sorry? In I can't remember, 1999 or 2000, the Institute of Practitioner of Credit Insurance and Surety, Australian Institute, commissioned the University of East London to do that. That's my last days before I left UEL. And then the University of East London joined hands with the Open University. And I was being asked to do the module on international business. It was very, very difficult for the normal academic to prepare the material for the e-learning. Really, we had to get training in order to write it in a way so people can understand it better. In fact, that handbook I wrote 20 years ago, in my opinion, is much better for my full-time students because I have to digest it to make it much shorter, simpler. I have to write question and answer. So it is very robust. But I think the problem for people, like Sadiq said, in the Middle East, in particular the Gulf, they didn't understand what is it. That's why they didn't recognize it. And the fact, exactly what Andrew said, Sussex University is just launched, Sussex University is #1 in the development studies worldwide. They have just launched, we just launched our MSc in sustainable development. So people are doing it now, the leading institution. I'm not here to promote my institution, but it's really the leading top world-class institutions, they are doing it now. In 2012, the Open University invited me as external examiner to go to their Open University launch in the Middle East, which was in Kuwait. And I was the external examiner, and I remember very well, it's completely robust process. So I was external for the business and money. I'm not here to promote the Open University. I never worked for the Open University, but that was very robust. So the way we evaluate the program was the same and even more tough than, I was just purely evaluating a program as any other universities. And the fact, as she said, UCL, King's, all these universities are doing it, and MIT, every day on the Facebook, all the advertisements on the Facebook, MIT, Sloan, all of them. But just to conclude, in my opinion, the way the e-learning now is happening is very exciting. If all of them, they did this very fantastic presentation, but if you remember the first one, Manuel, it's so exciting. It's not boring like we go to the classroom now. The students now may easily not turn to the class because they have the cameras now, video capturing. This is exciting. And I think, in my opinion, being someone from a classic non-e-learning academics, this is the future, and I can see it by my own eyes in my own university. And I think it holds lots of future prospect for developing countries who they have difficulty accessing people like those in the room. And if you just watch how they are interacting with this, it's a tremendous opportunity for them to listen to you guys from Africa, from Middle East, from everywhere. So I think there's definitely a future. And what is so embracing me, and I'm very glad, I think you have done justice to our award to you, you are tackling issues of really the leading front in our research now. This is what academia and on ICT are really looking at. And it's so amazing to see the United Nations itself is now investigating the same thing. So I think the UN is now ahead of academia, if I may say, because this is the first time I have seen in an academic platform this is being discussed in such a very thorough, and I think we look forward to what's happening after the break.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think I don't need to summarize the debates after such an interesting final remark.
Please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.